Hello, everyone. Welcome to SuitCASES, conversations for the healthcare traveler. If you are a healthcare traveler, please allow me to ask you one quick question. Have you ever been in a situation where you've been canceled prior to or while on an assignment? My name is John Kiwanuka, and for the past 13 years, I've served healthcare travelers primarily as a recruiter. In that time, I've been blessed to work with some of the most brilliant minds in healthcare, people who have taught me more about their profession and even more so taught me how to be a better recruiter. Part of being a better recruiter is all about knowing when to listen. And that's why SuitCASES exists. SuitCASES is a platform for current and former travelers to share feedback from previous experiences to help others as they embark on their next adventure. So thank you for joining us here today. Our topic is going to be centered around being canceled on an assignment. And our guest, he's no stranger. And if you had the opportunity to join us on the Suitcase last year, you would have seen him on an episode speaking to the beginning of his travel experience. He is a former social work traveler of 4 years and recently casted on season 1 of Peacock's Emmy Award-winning reality TV show, The Traitors, and is now currently working as a therapist within private practice. Everyone, please help me welcome Quentin Jiles to SuitCASES. Quentin, how are you today?
I am doing so well. Thank you for having me. Great conversation to have. I'm excited to be here as well.
Excellent. Well, we got so much to talk about, and I got to tell you, you were the first last year on the Suitcase, and as we rebranded and we got to the next step here, we're now introducing SuitCASES. So it's just an honor to have you here first to talk your story on that as well.
Thank you for having me. I love being the first. You know, I told you behind the scenes, I like first. So let's get into some things.
Love it. Well, we talked about it before. This topic is going to be basically about you've been canceled. So what's next? Now, I know you've had plenty of experience working as a traveler. You may even have had more conversations about being canceled. How did you handle it? So we're just going to dive right into it. If you're ready to help other people, you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So recently, we ended up having a conversation through Facebook, one of the groups, and somebody had mentioned that they had been canceled 2 weeks into their assignment and was asked to leave immediately. It was that person's third assignment, and they had never really seen that happen before. So my first questions, I should say, as a group would be, is that normal, and can anything be done to prevent that?
You know, the unfortunate reality is it's very normal. And the other unfortunate reality as a traveler, there is absolutely nothing that you can do about it. I think we have to, once you get into the business of traveling, you have to look at yourself like an ad hoc or an adjunct worker, because that's really what you are. Whether you are there to, you know, establish a pilot program for a particular space, whether you are there to fill an employment need, 9 times out of 10, you're in filling an employment need that the hospital, skilled care facility, whatever setting, you're there to fill an employment need because someone went on leave or they just can't find qualified staff in the area in which this medical facility resides. So you are never safe. Honestly, you're never safe, because at any point that facility no longer needs your services, then they have the right to terminate that contract, right? So we also have to keep in mind that as a traveler, we're making way more money than we would if we were at a traditional 9 to 5, right? And that also then means that the facility is paying a higher premium for your expertise and your services. So that's really not a sustainable long-term business model for any business. And so again, you just have to look at yourself as, you know, an adjunct type of professional. And once the hospital no longer needs you, for lack of better phrases, then you're no longer needed. And you kind of have to roll with the punches with that, but really doing the work to realize that this is not a 9 to 5, which I think can be difficult because majority of us came from a traditional 9 to 5, or if you're a nurse, whatever that 312 situation looks like. Most of us come out of a traditional workplace environment, which you would need to be prior to being a traveler, right? Because you need to come with a certain set of skills and expertise and training, because once you get on the floor, it's go time. There's almost never any training. They're ready for you to go again, which is why they're paying you a premium. So once we reframe our thinking about what this job actually is, I think that we can prevent some of the emotional blowback. I'm in my therapist bag right now. We could prevent some of the emotional blowback that actually happens if we are canceled out of nowhere.
Great, great. And, if we're speaking specifically to an experience that you may have you ever been in that situation
Oh
where,
gosh.
as you get into that assignment, they say,
Yes.
hey, we don't need you. And then if you have,
Mm-hmm.
well, how did you handle it? How did
Yeah.
you adjust?
Yeah. So I've never been in a situation quite like the person who stated this question where they were 2 weeks in. I've been in a situation where I've completed a contract
Mhm.
and they kind of strung along the renewal, right? And so I did 13 weeks at this facility in Atlanta, Georgia. And actually, John, I think you were my recruiter at the time. Yeah, you were. You were my recruiter at the time when I went to Atlanta. And they like extended me every week. It was like, okay, well, we need him for 1 more week. Okay, well, can we get him for 2 more weeks? Okay, now we need him for 1 more week. And I think we did that for maybe about 5 weeks
Mhm.
until I was like, all right, this is one, you're playing with my time and you're playing with my money, because, and again, understanding that, it is a contract, but as a traveler, you still want some type of stability, right? You still want to guarantee some type of income so that you can live. And so in that situation, it was a mutually, well, I don't know how mutual it was, but I said no to the last extension. I remember speaking with you. I said no to the last one and let them cancel the contract. And then we just had to figure it out. The thing was, because I said no, it didn't really give us time to line something up immediately, which most travelers do.
Mhm.
Your contract is ending in 13 weeks. If you're at a good facility, you can kind of gauge whether they're going to renew you. Most managers start talking about, or excuse me, I'm saying renewal, an extension.
Mhm.
You kind of know if they're going to extend you. Most managers that I've experienced and other people, you kind of know within about the month your contract is set to end, is set to expire, if they're thinking about extending you or if you need to look elsewhere for another contract. So because I said no in that one, I had to take a bit of a break until we found me something else. And I just, for that, in that specific instance, I just chose me. I just chose me, and I was like, I don't want to keep week to week wondering, am I here? Especially because every time I give you a yes to another week, I'm giving someone else a no to 13 weeks, potentially, right? So again, by that time, I think I had been traveling at least for about 2 years at that point. So I pretty much knew the game. So the way I handled it is I took my power back and I just chose what was best for me. Now, I did have another instance, it just came to mind in the very beginning of my traveling career, where the contract ended abruptly. I think it ended 9 weeks into my 13,
Okay.
somewhere around there. So I was there for at least 2 months. It either ended around the eighth or ninth week. And that was jarring because I think it was my second, I think it was my second contract that I had done ever.
Mhm.
And that I think that is when it hit me the hardest, because at the time, and I think I might be getting ahead of myself, but at the time, because I was so used to working a traditional job, it's like, okay, you work this job, you stay there for X amount of time, you go. In the recruiter I was working with, I was only working with one. And so at the time, she's a lovely lady, nothing against her, but I was only working with her. So when it happened, for social workers, we know if you travel or if you want to get into it, our jobs are not as readily available as your nursing travel jobs, or, I mean, shoot, even your CNAs, your occupational therapists, your physical therapists, all these other jobs. Social work, we're kind of limited in the travel opportunities that we get. So I didn't know that. So when it ended, it was kind of like a shock because I'm like, all right, well, what do I do now? Especially because my entire car was packed up with my entire life, again, because I was new to travel. I'm thinking I needed everything subsequently as the years went on. If it didn't fit into 2 suitcases, it wasn't going.
Well,
But in the beginning, you basically bring your whole life, you
yeah.
know. So it was jarring. It was hurtful. It was kind of, I regretted the decision to even travel because I didn't know where the next check was going to come from. At the time, because of the pay, it was so much more than I was getting at, a traditional 9 to 5. And my mindset was, I'm gonna spend the check and get it right back. As soon as I spent it, it was coming back the next Friday. And so I was living in that way, not really managing my finances the best way. So it was a test at that time, not knowing what was what. But after that, that is when I decided that I needed to work with more than one agency to make sure that if it happened again, then I'd be straight.
And we definitely will get to that one because
I know I jumped ahead. I'm sorry, but it just tied into it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And as we get to that point, one thing that I'm hearing from you specifically is mitigating the risk, understanding the risk of travel. This can happen. This is normal. Yes. And there's really not much we can do about it. I will add this from your perspective. There were times where, and I'll tell you this from my perspective first, there were times where I could have been better for you. And at the end of the day, hearing that the idea of, okay, we got a week here, 2 weeks there, a week there, 2 weeks there. Is that fair to you as a traveler to not know where you're going to be in a week or 2 weeks? I mean, there are families you got to take care of. There's a life that you have to live. And for us to hold you hostage like that, is that really fair? So I'll ask that question to you. Was that fair?
And I think everyone is different in that situation because even though I experienced it, I would say, yeah, because again, at this point, I understand the nature of the beast. I know what I'm getting into. I'm not at, a unionized job. I'm not. I am coming to this space to make a particular amount of money to deliver a particular set of skills. That sounds like taken, but so, and at any point, I can leave, you can leave, so was it fair? Yes, because that's the nature of the beast. That's the nature of the business. Did it feel good? No, absolutely not. I would rather not. And I was enjoying my time in Atlanta. I wanted to stay, it was probably best that I left, but I was having a good time. So I wanted to stay, but it didn't feel the best. But however, at that time, because I had already experienced what I experienced the first time, by this point in my career of travel, I was a much better steward of my money. So I wasn't spending it recklessly. I had a healthy savings account in the event that the contract canceled, or if I just wanted to take a couple months off. I planned it out to where if I take a couple months off, I still know even if I jump back into the field, it's going to take a week or two to get it's going to take a week or two to get my check rolling. I still need enough for that. So by that time, when we had that situation in Atlanta, I don't think it bothered me as much. I think if it was something new and I hadn't learned how to manage my finances and been ready at the drop of a dime, then sure, it would have totally sent me into a frenzy. But that's more of a personal responsibility type of thing, not necessarily is it fair due to the nature of the business that we were in.
Okay. Great. So similar situation, we had another conversation that we've seen on Facebook where someone said my recruiter called me on the Friday before I was set to start my new assignment. They mentioned that the assignment had been canceled, leaving me with nowhere to go. Is that normal? What do you do in that situation?
Unfortunately, it is normal. I've not heard this happen as much as the other, right? Okay. I've heard way more stories of people starting assignments and then them getting canceled as opposed to them being canceled a day or 2 days before you're supposed to start. However, like I said in the beginning, we have to understand that the facilities, it's a business. It's a business. Yes, we are in the healthcare helping profession. And at the same time, a lot of the people that run the facilities in which we work at are business oriented and minded people. So they're always weighing a cost versus risk analysis, right? So again, if a normal employee, let's say a normal social worker, and I'm using smaller numbers, is $2 an hour, and you can't find a social worker, but you put out a filler for a traveler, well, you have to pay that person to come. right? And leave their family and leave whatever it is they got going on across state lines to come to you. So now what you could have gotten for $2, you have to pay $6, right? And so then you also running, is it worth the investment, right? Are we still bringing in enough patients to satisfy what we need to make to pay everybody and to satisfy our bottom line? In a perfect world, we wouldn't be money oriented when it comes to healthcare because people need help. We're here to help. But we don't live in a perfect world. We live in a world where the dollars got to make sense. Yeah. So if they're always running that analysis, then you just have to, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, be on your guard. This probably, if that situation happened to me early in my career, that would have freaked me out and I probably would have gone home. Because when I took my first contract, first off, the facility was so all over the place, I didn't even get interviewed. It was a joke how I got that contract. You know, I knew a traveler. Her recruiter was like, "Hey, he wants to go somewhere." I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" Sent over my resume. 2 weeks later, she called me and was like, "Why didn't you tell me they interviewed you?" I had not been interviewed. She said, "Well, they issued the contract." I said, "Oh, okay." You know, so I had to apply for the whole the reciprocity of the license, which took forever. I quit my 9-to-5. I actually had 2 jobs. I quit both 9-to-5s on just faith and hope that my license would be there by the time I drove from Texas to Vegas. To Reno, Nevada. So I was like really out there. I was just raw out there, right? Super vulnerable. So if that had happened to me, then I probably would have given up travel because there was no way for me to survive in that instance. Thank you, Lord, he kept me. But this is something that happens. So it's something that needs to be planned for. And I'll say the nature of travel has changed a lot. I've seen a lot of pushback because, your mama used to always say, and grandma, don't talk about your salaries. Don't tell people how much you make. However, I think that we've moved into wanting pay transparency, which I think is a good thing. I think people should be more transparent about the pay. So I can know if I'm getting lowballed or if you're getting lowballed, and we share those things. And at the same time, that pay transparency has caused much more envy and strife with people who do the day-to-day work at these facilities on the ground. And so I think I just saw legislation. Oh, don't have me lie. Was it Arkansas? It was a state that just passed legislation to cap how much travel nurses can make in their state, right? Because people were upset that people were coming into their state making excess dollars and they're doing the work every day and they live there and they, can't do it. I think they capped it at like 120% of whatever they pay their other nurses, something like that. Still substantial, but they just capped it, right? Yep. So the nature of that has changed. So I would just say govern yourselves accordingly, that it can happen at any time. If you want to take the risk to go out there, it's fun. It was like a permanent vacation for me. And I made good money. That's probably the most money I've made in a traditional, even though it was an untraditional job, but a traditional type of work setting. So just be prepared that it can happen and have contingency plans. Contingency plans.
Great. So, and I'll add to that, as we continue on this journey with SuitCASES, I can promise you that those topics, we talk about money motivation, money preparation, those are topics we're gonna continue to talk about. Yeah. And it's going to be more about educating travelers, and we could go down that road when it's necessary. But I just wanted to give you kudos for saying that, because these are true conversations that need to be had. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. So as we get back to this now, you did touch on this before, but let's talk about, the idea of just working with one company. So due to the risk of being canceled, should traveling healthcare workers talk to more than one recruiter or company? If so, why?
Every day, all day, 7 days a week, 365, and this year 366. Yes. Depending on when you listen to this, we're in the leap year in 2024, for the people that listen to it in 2027. Absolutely. That one experience when my contract got canceled early in my career opened my eyes to like, hey, I cannot depend on one company to find me employment. One, because the market is so fickle. Two, because not every company has every job, although there's another conversation of when are multiple companies with the same job offering different pay for the same job. But we're not talking about that today. But yeah, I think I might have sat for like 2 months when that first contract got canceled while I was working with just one company. And I think that opened my eyes right then that I cannot do that. And I think I had this misplaced idea of loyalty, right? Because it's like, oh, this person found me this gig and the gig pays well. Let me just stay with them. But again, when I turned my brain to a business mindset and realized, okay, they getting paid just like I get paid, but we all have to go to work. And so if it's nothing against you personally, but if you can't find me work because, either your particular company doesn't have the contract for the hospital or the facility, or because you have too many people on your roster that have the same qualifications as me and it's being passed somewhere else, whatever the case may be, I need to make sure I have several different people in my pocket always looking for work and understanding that this is a mutually beneficial relationship. I think in the beginning, I took it as, oh my gosh, this person got me this job. Whereas I realized, sure, they were the connector, but I got the job. It was my experience that got the job. It was me interviewing that got the job. They had the connection. And then when I go to work, they get paid based off of my work. So I had to flip how I looked at the business as if someone did me a favor. No, this is a mutually beneficial relationship. So I need to have people out there working for me because when I work, I get paid, you get paid, everybody's happy.
Love it. It makes sense.
Yeah.
To say that, I mean, that you're speaking to it specifically, and I'll tell you from my perspective, this is your life at the end of the day. Loyalty will only take you so far, but loyalty ain't paying the rent. If it's not taking care of bills,
hello.
Sorry, we gotta go, and that's okay. So it may not be conventional for a recruiter to say this, but talk to as many people as you need to. Talk to as many recruiters, as many companies as you need to. And there's more benefits to that. And again, as we go further down the road with SuitCASES, we'll talk more about it. But the reality is, this is your life. So do what you got to do. And if anybody judges you, then maybe they're not the right person to work with you at the end of the day.
100%. All right. And can I just say this really quick? And I know you're going to talk about it in a later case or later episode with someone else, and I'm sure they'll be fabulous. I've been in situations where I've talked to multiple recruiters and I've had different offers on the table, right? So now I have options now, and I get to choose, is this next contract about the most money? Then I'll take that one. Or is it about the location? And I've never lived in LA and I would love to live in LA. And sure, the pay is not as good as Wyoming. Well, maybe that's because nobody wants to go to Wyoming. That's why they're paying more. Everybody wants to go to LA. So maybe I take a little bit less and I'm in LA for 3 months and I get that. Like, I get it's the option of being able to be a lot more flexible in what it is that I want to do, as opposed to, just sticking with one recruiter or company and only being presented with what only they have. I hope I said that right. It sounded a little jumbled at the end.
But and making sure that your recruiter knows what truly motivates you. Now, obviously, money is a priority. It's always going to be a motivator, but it's not going to last. And we'll talk about that again. We'll talk about it. But
sorry. Yeah.
I'm glad you're saying this, because these are just ways we can lead into more conversations for the future. So thank you again. Okay, so a couple more questions here. And this is just more about how you would approach leadership. And if you're going to have an opportunity here to speak directly to leadership in a way. So, and I bring this up, there are times where this can be a very cold business. We've already talked about the idea of being canceled. Let's say you're in an assignment, you get canceled 2 weeks in, and you have to be done that day. Okay. Seems a little barbaric in a way, almost as if this is a business. We don't care what you do. You just got to go home. And my question to you, is there any advice you would give leadership on how to approach canceling an assignment? Is there a best practice to keep the delicacy of the situation in mind?
Oh, 100%. I would say first, before you even approach the topic of cancellation, run your own numbers, because you are the arbiter of that business. You should know, what the financials look like.
Mhm.
And so if you have agreed to a contract, understanding that it's a contract and contracts get canceled, have you actually run the numbers to be able to support bringing someone from their life to your facility to perform a task or tasks that you need done?
Yep.
I might beg to submit that if it's not based on behavior of someone being there 1 or 2 weeks being canceled, because that's the thing too, right? It's not always just the facility did it. Sometimes the travelers are not in the right mindset, because people can't, if you're going to do this job, you have to be able to adjust and adjust quickly, right? Like I said in the beginning, there's rarely ever really any training just on the system, and then they expect you to go. So as long as we cancel out, okay, a traveler's behavior, if we're just talking about canceling just based on the fact that you all don't have the money or you didn't have the need, then you need to run your numbers before you actually offer a contract. Every contract does not have to be 13 weeks just because that's almost like an industry standard. If you know you only need someone for 2 weeks, say that up front. There are people that are willing to run out somewhere, take PTO from their 9 to 5, run somewhere, do a 2-week contract, and come back to their stable income. So we don't have to, okay, the AI is working with me. So I guess I made a point. So we don't have to present contracts in the way in which I guess they've always been done. And again, I only did it for 4 years, but typically I only see a 13-week, rarely, sometimes an 18-week or a 26-week, which is just 13 and 13, right?
Yep.
If you know you need someone short term, just say that. There are people that are willing to do it. Now, in the event that you've not run your numbers, or you have and you thought this was sustainable and you really saw that, you needed a contractor for 13 weeks. Things happen all the time in business. Something could have happened. You all yourself could have lost a contract that generated revenue that supported your decision in bringing a contractor. I would say if that's the case, I understand cutting the bleeding, but keeping in mind that these people are people and that they have lives as well. And so if you know you're going to cut them, it would be not, what's another week? The bleeding is already happening, right? What's another week to say, hey, it's Friday, we have to end this, but you can stay until next Friday. It's a common courtesy. Is it necessary? No, because we all signed the contract that says, at any point, both of us can walk away, right? The only thing is only one of us is unequally damaged in the situation, right? So just understanding and hopefully taking into consideration that people did make a choice to come to your establishment to do the job. You did offer them something and they came to show up, barring behavior. So I think that giving people a quote unquote traveler severance, if you will, stay with us another week, please, and then move on, I think would lessen the blow for people just being kind of canceled abruptly. Because it sucks.
Yeah, it does. It does. So essentially just introducing a level of humanity in a sense, just understanding that there is another person on the other end. And this is a challenge to staffing companies as well, because it's very easy for a staffing company to just say, hey, you know what, you're canceled. Yeah. But there are staffing companies nowadays that are putting into the contract language that we need a 2-week notice. We wouldn't expect our person to end with 2 weeks.
I love that.
Asking you to give us 2 weeks to find something for that person. So those are just things to keep in mind, and ways that we can help kind of change the mentality or the perception of travel assignments or the challenges with travel assignments. So
and I would say I would even charge staffing companies as well, that they know that it's a risk, that this would happen. Them too. Let's keep it a buck. Everybody's making money. If you're offering me 10, I'm sure the contract is 20. So let's again, it's a mutually beneficial relationship. So maybe even the staffing company themselves putting aside in their budget set amount of dollars to help a traveler that automatically is canceled. Now, there can be stipulations on it. If the person just got there, you don't really know them, cool. But if you have a working relationship, which most people, well, if they find a good recruiter, right, and if they're a good worker, So barring behavior from both sides, 9 times out of 10, you're not only working with these people in a one-off. It's been 1, 2, maybe even 3 times. So if that's the case, because I've run a business and I think about things differently. What is more beneficial, the longevity of the relationship or keeping the most profits? I mean, you can keep the most money, cool, and I get it. We want the lights to be on. But if you are not interested in investing in the longevity of the relationship, that means you are always turning over people. So how much is it actually really costing you in the long run? Right? Instead of nurturing the relationship and having the same person or same group of people on board, continuing to make themselves money, and let's be real, continuing to make your staffing company money.
Yep.
So I think both, and then advocate. If you can get the hospital to pay for the week, then let them pay for the week, and you keep your money in the pot. If not, then you have something to tap into to give your traveler to kind of hold them over for the next week until y'all potentially find something.
That's a fantastic idea, and I'm sure there are staffing companies that have certain things in place, but I will tell you that just on one thing that you mentioned there, and again, this will be part of another conversation, but to be clear, when we talk about the percentages, most of the case when you're seeing markups with most staffing companies is going to be about 40 to 50%. So if there's 10, it's going to be roughly around 14 to 15 versus 20. So I know the perception's out there, and I can't wait to have this conversation because it's going to be so good.
I can't wait to listen. Yeah.
We're good. Okay. All right. So last question. I know we're running on time. So I want to bring up a specific situation and then have you kind of just help travelers out just with certain pieces of advice. So I'll tell you this. The pandemic brought a large salary increase for travelers, as we already know. 2023 was a year where we saw a significant decline in the pay for travelers, and a large number of those travelers were told mid-assignment by companies they represent their gross pay would decrease upon extension. Any advice you would give those travelers going through this now?
Yeah, have a contingency plan. I think so for me, this is just me. I wouldn't be upset at that. I'm being notified, right, that it's happening. It's not happening in real time. It's happening whenever I choose to extend. If the facility and myself, we agree to extend, then know that the salary will decrease. And then you have a decision to make. Do you stay for whatever reason? Is that money still good for you? Is the location still good for you? Then keep it. If not, go to the next thing. But me personally, it does suck, but I'm in the mind frame of, okay, this is a business. This is not, everything is a business as far as working goes, but this is not a traditional 9 to 5. If I'm at a 9 to 5, there is no way you are going to be able to tell me that next month, the pay will cut. Well, did the job responsibilities cut as well? Then we can have a conversation. But if the job responsibilities are the same, there's no way I'm taking a decrease. You can stabilize me and keep me wherever I am and maybe not do bonuses or raises or whatever, but not a decrease. But this is a contract position. It's contract work. You're not an employee. You are exchanging labor for money, right? And what they're essentially saying is the cost of your labor is no longer the same. The cost of the labor or the cost that I'm willing to shell out is no longer what it was when we were in dire need. So I'm not particularly mad at that. I think travelers just really manage your finances, and I'm glad to hear that you're gonna, do a podcast on that. I'll be listening to that as well. Even though I think I got mine pretty locked down and I'm not in the field like that anymore. But I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. But yeah, just manage your finances and again, I'm appreciative. You're telling me mid-assignment. So what does that mean? We are probably at week 7. We're probably at like week 7, week 8, right? So you have 7 to 8 more weeks at the pay in which you all originally agreed upon. I would ask, okay, well, what is the pay going to? If we know what it is, if it doesn't work, now you have 7 to 8 more weeks to find another spot if it doesn't work for you.
Love it. All right. Well, as always, you're incredible.
Thank you.
I truly appreciate you just being here and helping us out. You've always just been top notch, and you're appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, John. And you as well. I'm gonna encourage everyone to flock to you and to flock to whatever it is that you're doing, because you were hands down, and I'm not just saying this because we're on the podcast, hands down my top recruiter I ever worked with.
Thank you.
Hands down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I got nothing to say to that. I'm going to be humble. I'm going to take it as it is.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for helping us out. And we're here if you need us. Okay.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right, Quentin. Thank you so much. I'm going to let you go now. All right.
All right.
We'll see it. All right, Quentin Jiles. There you have it. That was incredible. And if you guys have questions, feel free to reach out. But with that being said, we're going to see you next time on the SuitCases. I apologize. The Suitcase was a while back. So we'll see you next time. Appreciate you. And thanks again.